Morning, councillors. I recognise there's a quorum, so we'll start the meeting at 10:02. We'll begin our meeting with a prayer. Heavenly Father, grant that we who would seek to serve you may have the wisdom of your Spirit, the guiding of your hand, and the grace to serve together for the prosperity of our city. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. National Anthem. Australian call, let us
rejoice, for we are one and free, with golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts, all beauty rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains that let us sing, advance Australia fair.
All right. Item 1, everyone's here. Item 2, leave of absence, nil. Item 3, condolences. I go to Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I'd like to move a motion of condolence and ask that a message of condolence be sent to Mrs Leslie Freeman, OAM, on the recent passing of her husband Raymond Gower, Bill Freeman, MBE, PDG. Mr Mayor, with your indulgence, I'd like to call upon Councillor McDonald to actually say a few words about Bill, because she has known him and the family for over 30 years. I have known the family since I've been a councillor, so 6.5 years. So, again, with your indulgence, before I pass over to Councillor McDonald, I'd just like to read something that Bill. It was a saying that he had, a phrase, a bit of poetry that he always recited at every RSL event that I've been to in the last 6.5 years.
Let me just accept your motion. Second, Councillor McDonald. Please go ahead.
Thank you. This was Bill's affirmation. I expect to pass through this world but once. Any good thing, therefore, that I can do, or any kindness that I can show to any fellow creature, let me do it now. Let me not defer or neglect it, for I will not pass this way again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Raymond Gower, Bill Freeman, MBE, PDG, passed away peacefully at 3 p.m. on Thursday afternoon, the 6th of October. Bill is the loss of one's life's true gentleman. Those who met Bill over his 97 years would appreciate that he led an exceptional life, based on the same creed as Her Majesty the Queen, that is, duty before self. After leaving the Church of England Grammar School, Churchie, in 1942, he enlisted in the Royal Air Force and was commissioned as a fighter pilot, where he flew Kitty Hawks and served the 77th Squadron in Borneo. Instead of going back to university at the end of World War II, Bill returned to the family farm, where his great-uncle Arthur Freeman owned a large banana and cattle farm on Tomawan Mountain. His great-uncle was kindly disposed to Bill and his father, who was still serving it in Germany until 1948. Bill was able to obtain 150 acres from his great-uncle, and he farmed this rich basalt soil on his beautiful Tomawan Mountain from 1946 until he passed away. Apart from being a very successful farmer, he was equally successful at serving his community, which he did with distinction for 75 years with his wife Leslie Freeman, OAM, always by his side. In recognition of Bill's dedication to his community, he was awarded a Member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire in 1986. He also served in many senior roles as District Governor of Q1 Division of Lines International and many other community organisations. Bill also gave his time for the Rural Fire Brigade, and he was actually the instigator with the Palm Beach Currumbin Lions Club to establish Sulk Oval at Palm Beach. And I know I've been to many a function at their home. They always opened their home up in the mountain, and it was known for Opera in the Mountain, where they raised thousands of dollars for medical research. And to celebrate his extraordinary life, the family conducted a private funeral service at Lambie Gardens on Wednesday the 19th of October. And given he was the Foundation Secretary of the sub-branch of the Currumbin RSL and was a member of the RSL for in excess of 75 years, the Currumbin RSL graciously allowed the family to hold a private memorial service for Bill on Wednesday the 19th of October. May the great man rest in peace. May we never forget his legacy, and may we always remember this giant but gentle man. Bill is survived by his dear wife Leslie and loving children David, Debbie and Lisa.
Thank you. Councillor Tozer?
I'd like to be added to that condolence motion.
We add to that Councillor Pauline Young, Councillor Worcester, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Peter Young, Councillor Caldwell, Councillor Gates, Councillor Owen Jones, and Councillor Hamill and Councillor Taylor. And of course, you're the second, so you'll be on that. Councillor, I put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against? Motion carried. As there's no other condolences, we'll move on to the mayoral minute. Councillors, I move that Council endorse the proposed action list in this mayoral minute, primarily that the Director of Transport and Infrastructure present a report to Council in November, which details the impact that the recent La Nina weather events had on existing maintenance resources and budgets. That the investment and prioritisation methodology for allocation of maintenance funding be considered at the Special Budget Committee on 17th November. As part of the December 2022 budget review, Council considers additional resource requirements to effectively address the potential reoccurrence of the 21-22 La Nina driven damage by city assets. Councillor Worcester?
Just have a couple of questions,
yes,
Mr Mayor, if that's all right. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Two questions. My first question to you regards how this mayoral minute may or may not change undertakings that city officers have already made to individual councillors to bring forward road reconstruction and reseal projects. So, for example, Varsity Sound Avenue is falling apart. Absolutely, it's a mess. And I met with city officers on site who observed just how degraded the road had become and secured their support to bring forward that reconstruction project for March. My question to you is, would you imagine an undertaking that city officers have made on that project would be impacted in any way by this mayoral minute and a subsequent decision by Council at its Special Budget Committee meeting on the 17th of November?
Yeah, I'd imagine that that project would be accelerated further. The idea here is that to highlight more resource that our officers require. But Kath, you want to add to that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So absolutely, we've obviously made those commitments already based on a prioritisation approach. Additional funding will essentially allow us to increase the amount that we actually utilise the maintenance budget for. But ultimately, the prioritisation will be based on the same things, which are obviously relating to the state, for example, of the roads.
Councillor Forster.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, what intrigues or piqued my interest with the mayoral minute is the use of the word maintenance funding. It's my understanding that reseal and reconstruction is dealt with under a capital budget rather than an operational budget. And I don't think it's necessary for the words to be changed, but I'm just seeking assurance from you, Mr. Mayor, that the purpose of this body of work is to actually look at accelerating capital spending on reconstruction and reseal to deal with our degraded roads and bringing them up to standard, rather than merely addressing maintenance issues, which are usually pothole related.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely right.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's actually a combination of both. At the moment we have the capital program, which is in that rehab space, but we also have the maintenance space where we do things such as some of the potholes and some of the lower level patching. So one of the reasons that we want to bring those together in the workshop in the Special Budget Committee is because sometimes we focus on just the capital components, but ultimately in an El Nino event we also see the maintenance requirements go up, not just for our roads, but for example trees in our parks and landscape where we need to do more work to clear those as well. So looking at it holistically and prioritising it in that together will effectively allow us to do better during these type of events.
Okay. All right, councillors. Anyone speak against the motion? Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against. Motion carried. Unanimous. Thanks, Kath. Confirmation of minutes. Councillors, any corrections? And someone like to move for adoption? Councillor Tozer, seconder Councillor Caldwell. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against. Motion carried. Mayor's report. So Friday, 21st October, I attended the Langram Gold Coast grand opening black tie event, the Diamond Ballroom. Councillor Taylor was there, and I think around 400 guests, and it was a formal launch. The five and a half star or 6-star hotel is now one of our marquee hotels in our city, and I think good time was had by all. Furnace, the fundamentals were playing, so there's a lot of dancing going on. Next one was sod turning of light rail stage 3 on Saturday the 22nd, next day. I attend with all three tiers of government representative, Senator Murray Watt, Ministers Mark Bailey and Megan Scanlon, and good to see John Witherup there as well. This $1.2 billion extension has commenced, so completion is around is 2025. So it's a lot of planning has occurred, but now we're rolling with it. Item 3, Spark Arena venue in Auckland. I attend the multi-facet Spark Arena. What I found interesting there is that arena configuration can be scaled to an audience of 1,800 people up to 12,000 people, and they've got breakout bars and all that. The primary objective here is to see that should there be an arena, whether it be private-public partnership, to see the size, whether or not we can put it to one of our city and one of our location, and perhaps Myombe Depot may be one of them to look and investigate. But either way, Live Nation was there, and you know, they'll follow through. They may acquire the land and go ahead with it. The point is to show that another entertainment precinct would be welcome in the city. So it's a long way before we work out the funding models and all that sort of stuff. They've got acts going on, I think 40 acts a year going on in there, so that's really revitalised a very poor part of the Auckland city, they told me. And then I'm caught up with Tataki, Auckland Unlimited, which is Auckland's unlimited, is it private sort of enterprise or control entities? As you know, we're doing our 1CP project, and Auckland has got a model there. They talked me through it. I didn't know this, but Auckland's actually the biggest council in the Pacific, bigger than Brisbane. Yeah, it's big, but because they amalgamated 8 councils together, and it's really, really big. Anyhow, so they'll give us their thoughts. Nah. Yeah. Meeting with Auckland Council as well, the major events team. They're quite generous, actually. All the various people I wanted to meet were available and gave us insight. They very similar to us, that they consider themselves as an event city, and so we can learn from each other, and not going too far, as far as wanting to be sister city or anything like that, but just really sharing how they're doing their stuff and how we're doing us, and maybe we can do things better value for money. Mayor Christian prayer breakfast, neighbour City Faith, Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Pauline Young, Councillor Tozer, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Borster. Myself were in attendance. Anyone else there? And this is a 6th annual one at Lakeside Room, and Neighbour was presented there along with other things. But today I think we got presentation with Neighbour, so I won't get into that. You'll get a full presentation at the later part of the meeting. Groundwater Country Music Festival was also on Friday, 28th of October. I attend the launch and also attend one of the nights, and well, as you can see, it's the country folks, the bush is meeting the beach, as they say, and entertainment was really good. Next one, I went to Boost Mobile Gold Coast 500. This one ended up being 200,000+ people attended, so it's the biggest one ever, and I had the privilege of starting the race, and then present the trophy to the winning team. So congratulations to Shane Wayne Grissenberg for winning. Next one, launch of City Movember. As you can see, I'm struggling there, but we'll look to anyone who's doing it, join the City of the Gold Coast team. We've got a team in there together, and last year, Gold Coast team raised $33,000, so it's a good cause. It's men's health. I met 31st of October, I met with Dr. Ruan Zhang, Chinese Consul General, newly installed, came down from Brisbane. He's passionate about promoting exchanges and cooperation between China and Queensland. So when the border opens, we'll discuss to rekindle those sister city relationship, especially Chengdu, with the medical research contracts partnership that was done. Deployment of more mobile CCTV cameras. We announced more mobile TV. So we're proactive. These mobile TV cameras are higher quality. They can see in the dark, clarity. So there'll be more conviction, more chance of conviction, and to assist the police. Queensland Tourism Ceremony Gala Dinner. was on Friday the 4th. Deputy Mayor was there, Donna Gates, and Councillor Caldwell was there. I'm not sure, I didn't say hello to everyone, but Councillor Owen Jones was there. Anyone else was there? Councillor Vorster. And I have to say, outstanding selection of Gold Coast operators were recipients of awards. Currum Wildlife Sanctuary, Cooley Rocks On for major events Gold Coast, and Councillor O'Neill had a special mention there, and SeaWorld Cruises, Ridges Gold Coast Hotel Airport, and the Dorset Gold Coast Hotel. And our friend Paul Donovan was awarded the prestigious Murray Watson Blake Award for Outstanding Contribution by an individual. He's well deserved after 40 years of service to the Australian aviation and tourism industry. Congratulations to Paul. Opening of Pan Pacific Masters game. Yep, well, we had a bit of fun there. And the good news is that we had 13,500 participants with 44 individual and team sports, and includes Paralympian para athletes as well. When you compare the numbers to participants in the Commonwealth Game, which is 6,600, this is huge. And as I said on stage, now we're doing it not biannually, we're doing it every year to 2024. So they're all pumped up with that. And I did say what happens on the Gold Coast stays on the Gold Coast. So it's not original, but it was funny at the time. I move that my mayor's report be welcome and noted. Seconder, Councillor Gates. All in favour, show of hands. Against? Motion carried. Clarification of members, nil. Business arising from minutes, nil. Presentation. Right. Councillors, this is presentation by Nick Mackay. Could you ask Nick to... Is he outside, is he? Is the door locked or something? Nick, well, you're welcome. If you can go to the lectern there. Councillors, Nick Mackay is the Director of NABER, and NABER is a global network working to resource local churches with particular resource to improve the communities in which they serve. Several partner organisations, including Gold Coast Church Leaders Roundtable, Multi-Faith Advisory and Action Group, and Queensland Police, engaged NABER to facilitate the NABER Impact Audit. The audit measures the collective social impact of the faith community in the local government area of the City of the Gold Coast and was supported by us. Nick has travelled from Melbourne specifically this morning, and he'll be returning to Melbourne straight away. I don't know why, but... Nick, please, if you can do a presentation for us all, so we know the impact that our volunteers and church group has in helping our people who's in need.
Of course. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you all for having me. I have made my way up from Melbourne this morning. I'm happy to say that I have caffeined up on my way through. I rate your cafes in Burleigh very highly, and that's the ultimate compliment coming from an arrogant Melburnian when it comes to coffee. But thank you for having me and for allowing me to present these results. Before I get into it, I would like to start by acknowledging the Yugambeh language people as the traditional custodians of the land that includes the area now known as the Gold Coast, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. Also like to express the desire to see the faith community play a significant role in the journey towards reconciliation across our nation. It is a great delight to be able to present the results for the Neighbour Impact Audit for the Gold Coast, which was officially launched at the QPS Multi-Faith Community Dinner a couple of weeks ago. I know that many people across the Gold Coast faith community will be delighted and really excited that some of their efforts to love and serve those in the wider community are able to be shared with you here today, and especially the thousands of volunteers who give so much of themselves for the benefit of others. As Neighbour, we've now conducted 7 of these impact audits across the east coast of the country. More than any other, I would say that this impact audit of the Gold Coast was a collaboration of groups from across the community with a shared desire to serve the city, and it was beautiful. And to that end, I'd like to recognise some of the key partners who helped to make this happen. Mr Mayor, you mentioned some of them already. To City Impact, the community organisation here on the Gold Coast, who is our official local partner for the audit, to the Gold Coast Church Leaders Roundtable, to the Multi-Faith Action and Advisory Group, and especially to Riali, who was so supportive of this process and saw the benefit of having the participation of groups from across the multi-faith community here. To the QPS, and especially Leah Kahika, and also to the City of the Gold Coast and Mr Mayor for your support and for the opportunity to present to you here today. To give you some brief background on Neighbour, as the name suggests, we exist to help local churches in particular to better love their neighbour. We understand that it's misspelt. It's not that we didn't graduate high school, I promise. Being part of a global organisation and network, we've decided to spell it phonetically so that it works in languages other than English. And the only reason that it's in all uppercase letters is that our design team thought that it made it look bold. But there's a few things that we do in our desire to help churches and faith groups in the wider community. One of those is to seek to identify examples of best practice in terms of faith-led community engagement projects and certify those and help to share those with the wider faith community across the country. We also do work to mobilise the church across Australia to take action on the key social issues of our time, things like domestic violence, vulnerable children, better welcome and integration of refugees, the issue of mental health. And then through the Neighbour Impact Audit, we measure the collective social impact of the faith community in a particular geographic location. So today I get to share the results of the impact audit for the Gold Coast with you. It was the first that we did in Queensland. We've since actually conducted a subsequent audit in Rockhampton, so now 2 in Queensland, but this was our largest to date. And I wanted to share with you 4 of the key results. I know you've all got the reports in front of you, but I'm going to pull out 4 of the key results that we found through this audit process, and then also 4 of the key themes that underpin the work that's taking place in this region. To set the context, the area that we measured was the City of the Gold Coast, the LGA. We didn't include, for that reason, a number of significant areas just outside the border, including Tweed Heads and Tamborine Mountain. As you well know, it is a large area with a big population. I think it's the 6th largest LGA in the country, and a beautiful place with a very well-earned reputation as a tourist destination, but also a place of increasing cultural diversity. According to the latest census data, 35% of the population is born overseas, 17% speak a language other than English at home, and there's also significant social challenges, as in every city and region across this country. In the Gold Coast, 31% live with some sort of long-term health condition, and 16 of every 100 households are existing on a weekly income of less than $650. It is also a place of great faith. Again, based on the latest census data, 44% of the Gold Coast population identify as Christian, 43% had no religion, 5% identified with one of the other major faiths, and 7% had fallen asleep by that point in the census and didn't respond to the question. So what did we actually end up doing as we went through this process and conduct the impact audit? Well, we identified almost 250 places of worship and faith-based organisations across the Gold Coast, and we reached out to all of them to invite them to participate in this audit process. Of those 250, we had 124, there's about 240 in total. We had 124 survey responses, so that represented just over half of all faith-based organisations on the Gold Coast, which was really encouraging and I feel gives us a good sample of the work that is happening in the region. The majority of those that participated in this audit were from places of worship, so local churches, mosques, synagogues and the like. But we also had significant participation as well from some of the larger faith-based agencies, community care organisations and also other faith-based organisations. And the respondents came from across the faith community. So 82% of respondents came from some form of Christian denomination, and you can see the specific breakdown there by denomination. We also had participation from the Baha'i community, the Buddhist community, the Islamic community, the Jewish community, and also a number of multi-faith initiatives and groups that participated in this survey. Of those who responded to the survey, we were able to identify over 200 community service activities being delivered across the region in order to address 13 of the greatest social needs. And let me break that down for you in a little bit more detail. So of those 206 services, 49 of those were focused on the provision of food and material assistance, which we know is obviously a massive issue at the moment, not just in the Gold Coast, but also across the country. There were 30 community service activities that were aimed at providing a greater sense of community connection, 19 focused on children and youth and chaplaincy, and then so on and so forth. And you've got all of the information in the final report that you've been given a copy of. If we look at those, the delivery of those services by social issue, you'll see that the three top social issues being addressed on the Gold Coast by the faith community. Firstly, social isolation and loneliness. Second, the issue of mental health. And then thirdly, financial and food insecurity. But also an enormous amount of work being done on issues such as domestic and family violence, physical health, addiction and substance abuse, and the list goes on. In terms of the number of people that are actually being reached by the work of faith groups in the community, we identified over 350 unique beneficiaries that have been served in the past year alone. Now, that is equivalent to 57% of the Gold Coast population. There will be some overlap of those who have benefited from multiple services, and that's articulated, I think, within the methodology for the report. However, it's still a remarkably high figure and a really encouraging one. Further, what you'll see in the report is that beneficiary interactions, so the touch points with people in need across the community, came in at over 1 million in the last year alone. And I specifically wanted to highlight some of the work that's being done to serve key groups or demographics within the community. What you'll see from this graph in particular is that there's a lot of work being done to reach families, to reach single parents, and to serve the young and the not so young alike. So what is all of this work worth? Well, we sought to be able to put a dollar value to some of the value of the work that's actually being done by faith groups in the wider community. And the number that you'll see in the report of social impact value is over $43 million to the City of the Gold Coast in the past year alone. To give you some idea of how that figure of 43 million has been calculated, we took the total paid hours that were reported as part of the audit survey, which came in at almost 1.3 million, plus over 400,000 worth of volunteer hours multiplied by the minimum wage for the last financial year, and then added additional resources in the form of goods and materials and the use of facilities that accompanied and enabled the provision of some of these community services. And if we break that down by area of service type, you'll see that there is great value being offered to the community in areas like children and youth and aged care and food and material assistance. But I also just wanted to highlight one other area, and that is disability support services there, worth over 3 million to the community. And it's a beautiful thing, because while some of these areas of work might be touching a relatively or a comparatively small number of beneficiaries, the work that's being done, the hours that are being put in, the quality and the extent of the services that are being offered to these individuals is quite remarkable. I also wanted to highlight the fact that this figure is an intentionally conservative amount, and that was part of our desire with this, was to understate rather than overstating, and hence the use of things like the minimum wage and the fact that we didn't extrapolate any of the data. So what's in here in terms of value is comprised of the 52% of respondents, not anybody who didn't respond to the audit survey. So that's an overview of some of the kind of key findings and key results from the audit process. To finish, I wanted to pull out some of the key themes because the numbers are very important and they're very helpful. But what were some of the key themes that came through this audit process? Well, the first one to highlight is that the faith community of the Gold Coast has done a remarkable job in stepping up in times of crisis. Throughout the COVID season, 44% of respondents to this survey said that they increased their community service activities, and there were over 60,000 people, beneficiaries in the community, that were reached, in addition to the work already being done and normally being done by the faith community in the midst of COVID and with that increased community need. One of the wonderful stories that came out of the COVID crisis, and many of you might be familiar with the work of Serving Our People, which I believe has now become the fastest growing charity in the country, emerged initially out of the Baha'i faith and is now a genuinely multi-faith organisation that's open to people of all faiths and none. It began during COVID but has continued, and they are doing really remarkable work to reach tens of thousands of people every year. In fact, I'm pretty sure every week. They are just a huge entity and doing remarkable work in the community. The great thing is, though, that this work in terms of responding in times of crises has extended beyond COVID to events such as the recent floods. And not just in Queensland, but well over the border into New South Wales. One of the stories in the report that you'll be able to read about is a wonderful collaboration between Global Care, Convoy of Hope, Love This City, New Life Care, Yahweh House, and also a group of local churches who decided to get together and drive down to Lismore in the midst of the floods and to help out in whatever way they possibly could, not being restricted by borders in the way that some of us might ordinarily think that we should be. So there were some beautiful stories that came out of that. The second key theme that I wanted to highlight was this idea of being a light in the darkness. And I think that's a key role for the faith community in the Gold Coast and, for that matter, across the country. This report has so many stories of the ways in which the faith community often sees the people that others don't and goes into the places that others won't. And that is critical, and it is so valuable. One example of that work is in the area of homelessness, and this image here is taken from the wonderful work of Glow College Missions. Another is as it relates to the issue of mental health. This is an image from an organisation called PTSD Resurrected that particularly provides support for veterans and those who are dealing with issues of post-traumatic stress disorder, and there's a case study on their wonderful work in the report as well. And then finally, the issue of domestic violence. And this image here is taken of the Gold Coast Church Leaders Roundtable, who have partnered over the last couple of years with Griffith University to help roll out their mate bystander training to many in the faith community, so that we can begin to properly understand the core issues and culture that underpins and enables the issue of domestic violence to be as prevalent and the scourge that it is, and seek to address that both within faith communities as well as in the broader community. The third theme that I wanted to pull out was the idea that we are better together. And I think this comes from an understanding that when it comes to the social issues that affect our community and the challenges that we experience, we all have a role to play and none of us can do it alone. And many of the stories in this report tell and have a recognition that when we connect and when we collaborate, when we come together in community, that is when real change happens. And indeed, many people are already partnering, and many of the respondents are already partnering either with one another or with other groups in the community, including police and council and medical and health services. So there's already an understanding and a desire to partner and to work with one another, which is beautiful, as well as an increased engagement with Indigenous Australians and our First Nations people in particular over the past year. But as I said, one of the overriding themes within the report is this idea that when we actually come together, that is when we can create real change, and when our powers are combined, we will see the sort of impact in people's lives that we're seeking in the wider city. And the final theme that I wanted to pull out was the idea that people matter most. So this report is about numbers, but I want to stress that the work is about people. It's about people living with disability, like those who are being served by Bethany Care. It's about people who have loved ones in hospital, like those who are being cared for by the Mooring. And much of the work of the faith community across the Gold Coast happens year after year behind the scenes. It is being done by people who have no desire for and do not pursue any form of recognition. They do it out of a heart to love others and to serve the wider city. And this is, I believe, the true and the immeasurable value of faith to the Gold Coast and well beyond. So where do we go from here? Well, it's a good question and one that I don't have the exact answer to, and I hope that's okay. I think this is going to be a discussion, and there will be further conversations that I know happen within the faith community beyond from here. But let me give you a couple of the opportunities that I foresee might exist. One is that I think there's a great opportunity for a greater sense of unity across the faith community, and we've seen that build even over the course of conducting this audit. I think that there's an opportunity for articulating a shared vision for the city and the desire that we all share to see everyone in the city prosper. And I think there's also opportunity for increased coordination and collaboration between the faith community, police, council, medical services, the business community, and other key stakeholders. So that's it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for allowing me the time to present in detail on this report. And as an outsider to the Gold Coast, I just wanted to say you've got a pretty special city here. It's been a joy and a privilege for me to spend so much time here over the last couple of months. And it's now my job to go back home and try and convince my wife and children that we should move here. Thank you very much.
Councillor, questions for Mr Mackay, anyone? Councillor Tozer?
Mr Mayor, thanks very much. Look, I suppose I just want to express that for some time now, there's been lots of little anecdotes of stories where the church community has kind of entered where maybe government can't or insurance companies can't. I had a story of a lady in my division who a tree fell on her roof and the insurance company came and picked up her roof. She was an older lady, she was in her 90s, and they fixed her roof, but her garden was trashed and she couldn't do it. And the local government can't go in and fix someone's garden, it's private property. The insurance company wasn't going to fix the garden, so I just reached out to some of the local churches and I had 3 different church groups offer to go and fix her garden. Those sort of anecdotes mean a lot to people in the community, but what I think is really good about this report is that it kind of brings some data, quantitative analysis into the conversation about the church organisations being the largest non-government provider of community service in Australia. And I suppose I just want to express my thanks for that. It's helped me turn the anecdotes that I say to my community about why the church whatever you believe about God, the church organisations are important to our community. It's able to back that anecdote with really clear information that's been collected. And I suppose I just wanted to express my thanks also to the Office of the Mayor for chipping in, I think, 1/3 of the cost for the project as well. I know there was other organisations who chipped in, but I appreciate that. Whilst I wasn't involved in it, I appreciate the work. So thanks.
Yeah.
Councillor Owen Jones?
Thank you. I was just in regards to the survey group. Did you also survey the school chaplaincy program and the Scripture Union?
That's a great question. Yes, Scripture Union was involved. They were one of the participants, and some school chaplaincy work as well was included. The invitation was provided to everybody that we identified. I know that SU participated, and there are examples of other chaplaincy provided services that are happening here. So certainly some of the respondents did that sort of work.
So, Mr Mayor, the extension of that question is in regards to the chaplaincy, which is more pastoral care than anything. Were those numbers picked up in the numbers that your end report reflects in regards to youth and number of people contacted?
Yes, they were. Yep. So that included that work as well. And Scripture Union in particular is obviously doing quite a significant amount of chaplaincy work across a number of schools, government schools as well as, I believe, Christian schools. And that was all included. Some of that will come out under the numbers around chaplaincy, and some of those chaplaincy services may have chosen to report under youth. So there could be a little bit of overlap there. But in terms of the total number of services being provided, there is clearly broken down by the areas we were able to do. Does that answer your question, Councillor? Yep.
Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. First of all, thank you very much for this work.
Pleasure.
It's really, having data is really helpful as a starting point so that we can kind of just understand the circumstance. I was curious, with the partnerships that you mentioned, you noted that less than half are currently partnering with local governments or an authority, and there wasn't any note of whether people, I don't know whether the question was asked, whether there's any partnering with state government or federal government. So that data wasn't in there. I don't know whether that's... so that's particularly of interest to us, and for me, since I've been in this role for two plus years, and had to delve into the area of homelessness.
Yes.
And the way that all the organisations work on that, I think that this work's quite interesting because it can say, okay, well, maybe collectively we could be allocating time to this area. And like you mentioned, food security is a big focus, but some of our data is saying, well, maybe that's not actually the best allocation to support these people. Maybe there's some other ways that we can do that.
Yeah.
So where do you think, now that you've got this data, how do you think is the next step for us to kind of, because I don't know whether there has been such an overview before of these voluntary organisations. Where do you see the next step in terms of taking that and delivering what we really need?
Sure. Thank you for the question. I think if I can speak just briefly to the comment you made about the importance of data, I echo that sentiment. I think that what this helps the faith community to understand, and hopefully the broader community as well, to understand what's being done well, where are the areas where the faith community is making a real effort, where are the gaps, and what can be done better, and what can be done better together. And so if we take that example of food and material assistance and the cost of living obviously being a huge issue here as it is in many other parts of the country, I think one of the opportunities that might come out of this would be for the various groups that are already doing work in that area to come together and discuss the ways in which their work overlaps to the extent that it doesn't already, see if there's any duplication of services and whether that we can streamline our efforts and also then reach more people who aren't currently being served. And I would hope that that would also open up conversations with other key stakeholders in the community who have a shared interest and indeed are already doing work in that area to be able to think about what collaboration would look like in order to reach the maximum number of people in the ways in which they need to be served.
Councillor Pat.
Mr Mayor, so given that, who do you think is the appropriate lead on that? So, for example, we're kind of in this space, local government, because we're related to everything.
Yep.
State government, who's absent from this report,
Correct.
is in the space in a lot of those areas.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful for the work of Neighbour, but I also recognise that, you state we are a network of Christians,
Yep.
and you've actively gone out to engage with other faiths.
Yes.
But whether there's a limitation there in terms of who takes the lead.
Yeah.
So who do you think that should be? Should it be a government group, or should it be Neighbour, or who does that?
Okay, so I think part of the power and the beauty really of this impact audit in particular is that it was community led and it was multi-faith. My encouragement would be that would be the tone that continues in terms of the work that comes out of this. I think it should be community led and I think it should be multi-faith. My personal recommendation would be to have next step conversations of the type that you're referring to with City Impact, because I think they're a wonderful and relatively neutral partner within the region. I know that they have Christian foundations, but are actively seeking to do work with the multi-faith community. They were part of the ways in which we were able to be introduced to MAG and to Ree and other wonderful people in the community. So I would suggest that City Impact would be a good starting point, but then they would also be able to, I think, bring in other relevant partners, both those that participated in this audit, as well as I'm sure a number of other key stakeholders across the region that we weren't able to engage with on this occasion, to decide who needs to be involved in what and who needs to be part of what conversations. I hope that's helpful. Yep. We as Neighbour will continue to be here as we can and as we can support, but we also understand that there's something really specific and important about the local, and we want to get out of the way and allow people here to do the work that you want to do.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Appreciate the work that you've done. It is really important that we do capture data, and community organisations capturing the value of what they do in all areas is really important. But the 52% that was surveyed, the rate that you had was a minimum rate, and it was around 43 million. Is that 43 based on the 52% surveyed? So what could a true value be to the survey? And second question, I think following on from Councillor Patterson, there's some really good data there to understand where the money's been going. I think it's very important at some point not just to have this data and it driven to ensure that we are directing the money into the right areas. Yep. But thank you very much. But just curious in relation to your numbers.
Yeah, of course. No, thank you for the question. As I said, the figure in here of that 43 million is intentionally conservative. It's conservative because it's based on the minimum wage. It's conservative because it's only based on the 52% of respondents, and we didn't extrapolate intentionally. So it's also conservative because it doesn't include anything in terms of the type of informal work that's going on by faith communities. And I know, Councillor Tozer, I believe you made reference to people like coming around to help fix up someone's garden after a storm. None of that's included. We also haven't included anything in here that is the SROI, the social return on investment, or the cost saving to the community of the work that happens by faith groups and what that prevents as well as what that addresses. So I would speculate, although I'm only speculating, that the value would be 2 to 3 times what we've stated in there in real terms. It could be much larger, but our intention with this was to be conservative, because it's not an exercise about saying, look how amazing the faith community is, even though I believe it is, but it's about saying there is some real value here that's already been put into the community, and how can we identify what we're doing well, what we're not, and how we work better together.
Well, Councillor Lacastre?
Sorry, just one question through you, Mr Mayor. And again, I think everyone's saying thank you for what you've done, because what you've done is rather remarkable. Given that 82% of the respondents were Christian, and some of the other related faiths wouldn't have the resources as the combined Christian resources, has there been any difficulty or resistance from people in need of help? And I'm thinking particularly in areas such as, say, domestic violence, or with people in the community of other faiths. Has there been any sort of pushback, given that the bulk of that help might need to come from Christian organisations? I'm just wondering whether there's been any barriers, and whether you've been able to get through and help some of these people.
That's a fascinating question, and I appreciate the insight. I can't speak to the work that's happening specifically on the ground in that regard. I have heard of a few anecdotes. What I can say, though, more generally, is that I think that in many situations, different communities require different help from different people, and in some cases that is from people who share a faith or a cultural background such as themselves, and particularly on an issue like domestic violence. And so I think that there's certainly a missed opportunity if we're not encouraging and making use of the full breadth of the faith community to respond to the breadth of the social issues that exist. And what I'm excited by is that some of the conversations happening, for example, on the issue of domestic violence, are saying the work that the Gold Coast Church Leaders Roundtable has done with Griffith University, how could that be shared with shared with the broader multi-faith community and other non-Christian faiths, so that they can deliver similar services and have similar training to be able to respond to the needs in their unique communities. And I think there's a degree of understanding of the local context that needs to happen if we're able to meet people where they're at and serve them in a way that makes sense to them. Yeah.
Well, Nick, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Especially for the work and the presentation.
Yeah.
You know, and safe travel, and I hope you'll be like a boomerang and come back up.
It does seem that way. We now have 2 staff who are based on the Gold Coast, so I'm joking that my hiring policy now is just I only hire staff that are based on the Gold Coast, because it gives me an excuse to come up here. So yeah, I'll be back.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed.
Oh, is there a photo I can take? We'll go to the front.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Okay, councillor's presentation done. Conflict of interest, Councillor Hamill.
Thank you, Jody Sanchez. Mr Mayor. Wow. Mr Mayor, so I have a declarable conflict of interest before the meeting to raise. It is in regards to an application that's being dealt with in planning court already. So the decision's already been made in court, and there's some changes the applicant's looking to make to that approval and set of conditions. The reason for the declaration is it's in regards to the Phoenix project up in Yatala, which since the original application that was dealt with through the court, JJ Richards, my former employer, now is the majority owner of that business. So given my previous DCOIs around JJ Richards, I thought it prudent to put one in today. I'm seeking to remain part of the decision-making process on this one so that I can continue to keep my community informed about what was a very contentious project when it first came through council. There's no decision to be made by council, so this application won't be coming back to committee. There's no delegations that will come to me. It will be all dealt with in planning court, but it allows me to get briefings from city officers, allows me to meet with the applicant if I wish, and allows me to keep my community up to date on what's happening with this one.
Okay. Councillors, Councillor Vorster.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On the back of Councillor Hamill's assertion that there will be no decision for council and he will have no role in the decision-making process, I'm somewhat comfortable with him participating in the decision despite his conflict of interest, but would propose to add a condition which is very similar to one that we've applied in the past, I think with either Councillor Young or Councillor Tozer, that Councillor Hamill maintain contemporaneous notes during any meeting he might have with the applicant. And the only reason why I suggest that we have that condition is because this is a matter before the courts, and I would have thought it more appropriate for a councillor not to be dealing with a party in a court in the midst of legal action against council. But if that is appropriate and is to occur, I think to protect the interests of the council, any undertakings or representations made to Councillor Hamill be captured as a corporate record, just because it's a legal process afoot. So, for the sake of our Minute Secretary, I propose a motion which reads that Councillor Hamill may participate in the decision despite the councillor's conflict of interest because Councillor Hamill may be able to protect the community interest using his perspective as a local area representative, comma, and that that contribution outweighs any perception. Sorry, that contribution outweighs the perception that Councillor Hamill may have. So the councillor may have an interest that conflicts with the public interest. But adding the following conditions, that Councillor Hamill take contemporaneous notes during any meeting he may have with the applicant, and then add a B, that any such meeting be attended by city officers comma, including a delegate of the acting general counsel, if appropriate, and C, that a fresh declaration be required if Councillor Hamill is to participate in any decision-making process regarding this matter. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Gates.
Mr Mayor, I'll second that because I very well recall that the issue of that we're discussing today attracted 6,000 objections. It was the largest petition that was collected over many months, and the concern of the Yatala community was highlighted over and over again throughout the process. So I think for Councillor Hamill's, in the conduct of his role, he needs to keep that community informed of the process now that it's moved on to being a court decision, despite the conflict that he clearly has. And until I saw number C go up, I was still wavering, but I think it's very important that during this process, Councillor Hamill understands and knows what is occurring so that his community can be informed. And I think we may feel differently should there be a decision coming before this council that we are required to make. But on this occasion, I think information to the community is very important.
Councillor Caldwell.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. So I just have a little bit of a problem with the first line and its contradiction to paragraph C, because on one hand we're giving him the ability to participate in the decision, but then we're saying it needs to come back if there is a decision. So I think we either need to do one thing or another. But just to give some context to this matter, the original application was an appeal, and because it was resolved through the appeal process, the change application that's now being contemplated also has to follow a court-related process. So Councillor Hamill won't have any opportunity to speak directly to the other party, and I'm sure he won't. But if there is, for example, the need for a mediation or a dispute resolution process, it may be the case that he's in the meeting for that. I'm more interested personally in him being able to convey the process to the community. So I think that's where I would like Councillor Hamill to be able to receive information from officers and give information to the officers and relay that to the community more than anything else.
So in replacing the first line of the decision, the briefings?
Well, we might just need to work with Councillor Vorster here on what he had in mind. I think it's more that he was thinking that if it was to come back to the chamber for a decision, but I think that's probably unlikely.
Okay.
So I think we could probably just dispose of C personally, but...
Councillor Vorster?
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. So, like Councillor Gates, I believe that there is a public interest in Councillor Hamill being able to receive information concerning this matter and to convey that information to an interested community, because they might feel as though they don't have representation in the absence of Councillor Hamill filling that role. That said, in my gut, I don't believe that it is appropriate. I'm not suggesting Councillor Hamill seeking to do this, but I don't believe that it's appropriate for Councillor Hamill to be meeting with JJ Richards, which is the identified partner, outside of any court-ordered process, whether it's an ADR, a mediation, or what have you. In order to make that very clear, I've attempted to provide 3 conditions, which basically say that if there is to be any meeting, that meeting must be attended by city officers and the delegate of the General Council. And I'm labouring under the assumption that if it's not appropriate for a meeting to take place, the Acting General Counsel wouldn't participate in the meeting, and therefore Councillor Hamill will never be put in a position where he's having a meeting that he should not have. Also requiring that Councillor Hamill take contemporaneous notes, I think is important, because if you've got 6,000 submitters, you may have some people who may take it upon themselves to make complaints or inquire on how the matter's dealt with. Maintaining those contemporaneous notes protects Councillor Hamill because his involvement in the process is properly documented and could be argued beyond reproach. I acknowledge, though, Councillor Caldwell identifying a conflict between Part C and effectively the preamble, in that the preamble begins, Councillor Hamill may participate in the decision. Part C says that a fresh declaration be required if Councillor Hamill is to participate in the decision-making process. Now, that needs to be addressed with some words, and maybe we can get some advice from our Acting General Counsel. But my understanding is that even participating in a conversation under the Act is participating in the decision. So merely having a conversation is being part of the decision-making process. So we've got some tension between a broad definition in the Act or the regulation and the specific will, I believe, of the Council to make sure that if Councillor Hamill is asked to provide guidance into a decision itself, that we want a fresh declaration made. So, Mr Mayor, if you're happy to take the question through you to the Acting General Counsel, I just wonder what words we may be able to substitute for may participate in the decision that narrows Councillor Hamill's involvement to participating in briefings and the mediation, but not providing guidance as to an outcome.
So have a think about it, Hamish. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and in that 5 minutes, come up with some words.
Excellent. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
So 5 minutes.
Yep, Simon, get
Bob, can you shut the door behind you, man?
Another 110.
Streaming on? They put the screen on too?
Screen's broken.
Really?
Broke this morning.
Oh, that one?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were conserving energy.
No.
All right. Councillor Vorster, are you satisfied with the motion?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. There have been some significant changes, so I think it might be worth bringing all councillors up to speed. The procedural motion reads that Councillor Hamill may participate in the decision despite the councillor's conflict of interest because the community interest is served by a divisional councillor providing relevant and up-to-date information about significant community issues, including this development application. That the following conditions apply to Councillor Hamill's participation in the decision. A, that Councillor Hamill take contemporaneous notes during any meeting he may have with the applicant, as unlikely as that is. B, that any such meeting be attended by city officers, including a delegate of the Acting General Council. C, that Councillor Hamill's participation in this matter, as permitted herein, be for the sole purpose to allow him to remain informed and kept up to date so that he may, where appropriate, keep his community informed. And D, that Councillor Hamill is to provide no guidance, direction or suggestion to the applicant or the decision makers concerning the substance of the matter.
Councillor Gates, seconder. Anyone argue against that? Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands.
Mayor Tate, Councillor Owen Jones, Councillor Gates, Councillor Caldwell, Councillor Peter Young, Councillor Baden-Lumsden, Councillor Lacastro, Councillor Tozer, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Vorster, Councillor Pauline Young, Councillor McDonald and Councillor O'Neill.
Against?
Councillor Patterson.
And Councillor Hamill did not vote. All right. We go to item 11.1, lifestyle community. Councillor Vorster.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I move that the minutes of the Lifestyle and Community Committee meeting held on Tuesday the 25th of October 2022, covered by recommendations 1 through 6, be received. Thank you.
Seconder, Councillor Baden-Lumsden. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hand. Against? Motion carried. Any item you wish to deal separately, councillors? Councillor Vorster.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I move that the recommendations of the... so I've done this so many times. I move that... Sorry, because normally we'd pull an item out. So I move that the recommendations of the Lifestyle and Community Committee be adopted. Meeting be adopted.
Seconder, Councillor Baden-Lumsden. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands.
What is
Against?
this? Wow.
Lost for words.
Get that on tape.
The motion carried.
It's the,
Thank you, Director.
the eclipse tonight.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
11.2, Transport and Infrastructure. Councillor Pauline Young.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I move that the report of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee meeting held on Tuesday the 25th of October 2022, covered by recommendations 1 to 8, be received.
Seconder, Councillor Taylor. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against? Motion carry. Any item you wish to deal separately, Councillor Vorster?
6.2, just to move it. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Move 6.2, the recommendation, I guess?
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Seconder, Councillor Pauline Young. Would you like to speak on that?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Very briefly, simply to say that city officers are doing the necessary work of reviewing how different land uses may induce different levels of car parking demand. The body of work that city officers undertook and what was presented to us contemplated that in some cases it may make sense to reduce the amount of car parking for particular land uses in particular areas. I think it'd be fair to say that it was the view of the committee that we want more car parking provided in our city, if only to reflect the fact that we have a growing population. So despite a modal shift, we will end up having more locals and ultimately that will always mean more vehicles. The purpose of the changed recommendation, Mr Mayor, was to ask city officers to focus their resources and time identifying those land uses where we need to be providing additional car parking rather than looking for opportunities to reduce the amount of car parking provided in particular areas. And Mr Mayor, what it also did was to clarify a double negative in the initial report. The initial report suggested, with one way of reading it, the double negative, that we would be reducing the amount of car parking in centres including Coomera, Bundall, Varsity Lakes and Nerang, which I don't believe any committee member had any appetite for. That wasn't the intent of the city officers. But just to put it beyond doubt, we did move a change recommendation, whose part 2 read, that action be taken to remove the reduced rates in centre zones outside of the transport hub area, including Coomera, Bundall, Varsity Lakes and Nerang. And what that means, Mr Mayor, is that when ultimately reflected in a future city plan, new development in those areas will provide more car parking, not less. And that's critically important to supporting jobs as well as protecting residential amenity. Thank you.
Anyone speak against the motion? Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against? Motion carried unanimous. Any other items, councillors? Councillor Pauline Young.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that the remaining recommendations of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee be adopted.
Seconder, Councillor Taylor. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against? Carry unanimous. Thank you, Director. 11.3, Planning and Environment. Councillor Caldwell.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I move that the report of the Planning and Environment Committee meeting held on Thursday, the 27th of October 2022, covered by recommendations 1 to 3, be received.
Seconder, Councillor Gates. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against? Motion carried. Any items, Councillor Bowden Lumsden?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just 6.1 for conflict.
6.1, conflict on the screen?
Yes, it was slightly just different from committee. It was just clarifying a point that Councillor Peter Young raised. I used the word neighbouring, where in more reality it's close proximity to. So just clarified that in the declaration. All
right. Where's procedural motion in the committee? Who moved that? Someone like to move it again? Yeah, Councillor Peter Young.
So I'm happy to move that once again.
Okay, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Caldwell. Councillor Owen Jones.
So, Mr Mayor, I don't intend to vote on this, but during the committee meeting, I brought the committee's attention prior to being councillor. I was involved in a company that owned 3 properties nearby to this property, so I don't. Nobody made an issue of it at committee, but I won't vote in regards to this.
Fair enough. Councillor, who seconded that? Councillor Caldwell. All right. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands.
Mayor Tate, Councillor Hemmel, Councillor Gates, Councillor Caldwell, Councillor Peter Young, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Castro, Councillor Tozer, Councillor Councillor Taylor, Councillor Vorster, Councillor Pauline Young, Councillor McDonald and Councillor O'Neill.
We didn't adjust that wording from committee, which was talking about, if that's the correct motion that's on the screen.
Let's adjust it then.
He's not. It was talking about the fact that he could participate in the discussions, but then he wasn't a member of committee. So I think the mover probably was happy for him to stay here for the vote. So we just might want to readjust that.
Mr Mayor, I suggest that we just add it so he can participate in the decision making.
May participate in decision making?
It changes it.
I was suggesting, Mr Mayor, that we just remove the condition entirely for this matter, because he is a decision maker in this forum whilst he was not in the committee because he's not a member of that committee. So we changed the words participate in the discussion to participate in the decision making and then remove clause A.
Okay. Councillor Caldwell, you good?
Yeah,
all right. Thanks. Let me put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands.
Mayor Tate, Councillor Hemmel, Councillor Gates, Councillor Caldwell, Councillor Peter Young, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Castro, Councillor Tozer, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Vorster, Councillor Pauline Young, Councillor McDonald and Councillor O'Neill.
Against? Did not vote? Councillor Owen Jones and Councillor Bowden Lumsden. Motion carried. Let's deal with it. This item. You want to move? Move, Councillor Caldwell.
Sorry, Mr Mayor. It still says... Oh, apologies, Mr Mayor. Just checking if I can vote on this item, it still says discussion at the top of that motion.
That's the conflict motion you're talking about?
Yes, and on the conflict motion, it still says that I may participate in the discussion, but not the decision. The very first line there, Mr. Mayor.
You can vote.
I can? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Decision making.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. This item here, Councillor Corwell, you can move that?
Moved.
Second to Councillor Peter Young. Anyone speak against? Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against? Motion carry. Recording. What did you do, Councillor? Councillor abstain. Councillor Owen Jones abstain. You voted in the positive, Councillor Bailey Lumsden. Okay. Motion carried. Any other items, councillors? Councillor Corwell.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I move that the remaining recommendations of the Planning and Environment Committee be adopted.
Second to Councillor Gates. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against? Motion carried. Did you vote? Okay. Okay, we're good? Thank you, Director. We go to 11.4, Water, Waste and Energy. Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I move that the report of the Water, Waste and Energy Committee meeting held on Thursday, 27th of October 2022, covered by recommendations 1 to 8, be received.
Second to Councillor Hamill. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against? Motion carried. So, any items deal separately? Councillor Corwell.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. If councillors could turn to general business item 8.1, just need to make some additional wording to that recommendation.
Okay.
So the committee recommendation was intended to bring Water, Waste and Energy Committee forward to 9 a.m, but without a similar recommendation in relation to moving the Planning and Environment Committee, then both of them would have been scheduled at 9. So I'm just going to add some, or vary the words of that resolution, if we can bring that up on the screen. So if it could read up until the part where it says around 8:26 to 9 a.m, and Planning and Environment Committee commence at 11 a.m. Full stop. Delete the balance of the original motion. I'll be guided by perhaps the Director and the Chair of Water and Waste as to whether that's likely to be an appropriate period of time for the Water Committee to run. I think it probably will be.
Is it enough time, or do you want to start at 7?
Depends on how many presentations they bring in that day, I suppose.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think we can get through the business by that time.
Okay. All right. Councillor Owen Jones. Second, Councillor Owen Jones. Put the motion to you then. All in favour, show of hands. Against? Motion carried. Any other items, councillors? Councillor Owen Jones.
Mr Mayor, it's not an item as such, but attached to the minutes of the meeting was some details regarding the waste levy update, which I think it's on confidential papers, but I think it's very important that all of the councillors that weren't at the committee meeting pay careful attention to it, because it'll set the scene for the next 10 years or so in regards to what the city needs to do for charging.
Okay. Do you want me to go into close, or...? Just question, okay. Councillor Tozer.
Mr Mayor, at the committee we talked at length about some of the information provided in these confidential attachments, and one of the things that we discussed is the idea that one of the tables be superimposed with a graph so we can communicate to our communities about the impact of the state waste levy on the cost of managing landfill and what we throw out of our households. Maybe a question through you to the Director. Is that a body of work that is continuing at the moment, and how far away should we expect for it to be ready for us to talk to our communities about?
Is this what you're talking about, trying to do it all in one? You want to speak on that? Or? Okay. Paul.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, we're updating that at the moment, and we do have a time slot in the upcoming special budget committee where we will be speaking to that and presenting the same sort of information in the format requested.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Right. Any other items? Councillor Cole, hang on. Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I move that the remaining recommendations of the Water, Waste and Energy Committee be adopted.
Seconder, Councillor Hamill. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against? Carry. Unanimous. Thank you, Director. We now go to Governance, Administration and Finance.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the report of the Governance, Administration and Finance Committee meeting held on Wednesday the 2nd of November 2022, covered by recommendations 1 to 15, be received.
Seconder, Councillor Patterson. You ready to do that? Okay. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against? Motion carried. Any items you want to deal separately? Councillor Owen-Jones.
Yes, Mr Mayor. There was a general business item which is 8.1.
8.1. Let's go to 8.1, everyone. Yep.
Mr Mayor, post the meeting, I've had a conversation with the CEO's office, and they had suggested that there needed to be an amended word. So, with your indulgence, I'm happy to move those words, Mr Mayor.
Is that on the screen like that? Yeah, read it out then, in that case.
That the expression of interest process to determine council's nominee at Destination Gold Coast Board be presented directly to the council meeting of the 2nd of December 2022, rather than by the Governance and Finance Committee.
Okay. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Caldwell.
Just a question, Mr Mayor, through you to Councillor Owen-Jones, why the change? Council resolved this last week specifically for it to go to a committee rather than a full council discussion, and I'm unaware as to what the reason is.
Yeah, it'll be good to know.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, the CEO's office has subsequently also circulated a memo to councillors in regards to the public advertising for that position that's taken place. Mr Mayor, the council meeting is on the Friday the 2nd of December. The committee meeting is on the 30th of November, which is the Wednesday. Mr Mayor, the city's two representatives being Councillor Vorster, who is the observer, and Councillor Robert LaCastra, who's the backup as observer, aren't on that committee. And Mr Mayor, the annual general meeting for Destination Gold Coast is also held on the 23rd of November, where the Destination Gold Coast select from their membership base directors. In my view, I think it would be better served if the decision was made by all 15 members of council on the Friday, rather than a recommendation from the committee on the Wednesday, Mr Mayor.
Okay. All right. Anyone else speak against this? Councillor Vorster.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Not to speak against it, but to ask a question, perhaps to assuage any concern that Councillor Caldwell might have, but pick up some of the benefits in Councillor Owen-Jones's argument. My question is, would it be possible for the related report to be circulated to councillors a little bit with more notice than we would usually have, and then that way councillors would have the benefit of digesting the OI, and we can have the meeting on the 2nd. We get the best of both worlds. Thank you.
Yes. Councillor Gates.
Mr Mayor, I just have a question about not this motion in particular, but if I might ask through you to the CEO, what the process is around that expression of interest. I had a look at it and I saw the advertisement which called for expressions of interest, but what happens once the CEO's office receives those expressions of interest? Is there an interview process, or is there just consideration given by officers and a recommendation made?
Through you, Mr Mayor. So firstly, Council have not resolved in any way what that process will be. So it'll be done through my office in the standard way, which is a panel will be formed. The applications will be assessed. We haven't determined as yet whether or not interviews are required. Sometimes I can say it'll depend very much on the calibre of the candidates. So we have some that are close. If there's a standout candidate, we don't usually do interviews. We haven't determined yet who will be on the panel, but there will be a panel formed, and based on that, a recommendation will come from me as CEO to GAF at the moment, or to full council.
To full council?
Yeah.
If this gets up?
If this gets up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Anyone speak against the motion? Councillor Jones, you want to close?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against? Motion carried. Any other items? Councillor McDonald.
Sorry. Have a conflict.
Oh, okay. Let's go to Councillor Gates.
I'm sorry, I just chipped in because I wasn't sure which item Councillor McDonald needed to speak to, but I needed to speak in regard to item 7.2, Mr Mayor. I made a declaration at the committee meeting whereby Council had appointed Colliers to provide details of what would be an appropriate rental for the property that was to be leased at Paradise Point. Is Paradise Point? Where is it? Labrador, sorry. So the declaration on the screen. I received a donation from Colliers in 2016. It actually says 2016, $1,250. But I'm seeking permission to participate in making a decision about the matter. I have had no contact with any party regarding this issue and have an interest in the matter, so would like to stay in the room if my colleagues support that happening.
There's a procedural motion there. Anyone can move that? Move Councillor Pauline Young, seconder. Councillor Tozer. It's on the screen. Okay. Anyone speak against the motion? Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands.
Mayor Tate, Councillor Hamill, Councillor Owen Jones, Councillor Corwell, Councillor Peter Young, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Bowden Lumsden, Councillor Castro, Councillor Tozer, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Vorster, Councillor Pauline Young, Councillor McDonald and Councillor O'Neill.
Against? Motion carried. Councillor Gates did not vote. And Councillor Owen Jones?
Mr Mayor, I'm happy to move it unless Councillor Bowden Lumsden would like to move it.
Yeah, move Councillor Owen Jones, seconder Councillor Bowden Lumsden. Anyone speak against? Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against? Motion carried. Councillor Gates, which way did you vote?
For.
Councillor Gates voted in the positive.
Thank you.
Motion carried. I go to Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wish to speak to, it was a closed item, 7.1, in regards to the Palm Beach Aquatic and Community Centre. Last Friday, the council officers arranged for an on-site with Councillor O'Neill and myself. We were given a presentation. One of the areas that was discussed at committee was the size of the children's playground area, and I'm sure that if council officers could see their way clear to extend that further, I'm sure that that would be a highlight of the area. But what we've seen so far, and Councillor O'Neill might like to speak on this also, it's very impressive. It's taken a lot of the community advice on board. One of the areas that I have asked for a report back, which I haven't received, I thought I might have received it today, but in viewing the whole complex and the working area, I can see where it would not have worked for council to keep the big pool open for public access. And as you might recall, there was a petition, asking for that to be open, but there was no way, with the amount of work that's being undertaken in there, that could have happened. I know that the community are going to have to wait for a little while, and hopefully we can get the contractors to spur along to finish before the time. But I was very impressed with the amount of work that's been put into the planning, but there are areas that, you know, is for further discussion. But and I'd like to thank the officers for they're arranging a monthly meeting for us to meet down there. It is a very, very big construction, and I thank you, Mr Mayor, for your support because this will be a fabulous facility for the Southern Gold Coast.
Okay. So you moved the motion then?
Yes.
Okay, move. Seconder, Councillor O'Neill. Seconder. Right. Councillor McDonald, would you yield for Councillor O'Neill to speak for the motion?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It is a closed item, and we did speak on at length at the committee about the inclusions and the exclusions of the project. But Councillor McDonald is correct. When we met on site and we went through a flyover video of the project itself, we were very impressed. Also with the finishes of the project, which we were a little bit concerned about it at first, but I think that we've been satisfied that it's going to be a fantastic, absolute fantastic addition for our area. Also the parking, to have 150 car parks in a basement car park and opening up the whole area for, you know, 4 pools and the creche, the community centre. We're very impressed with the community centre as well. That's going to be in the project. I think it's actually going to be such an addition to the Southern Gold Coast, and I thank my councillor colleagues for supporting it on.
Yeah. Anyone want to speak against the motion? Debate's closed. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands.
Division.
It's every division.
Mayor Tate, Councillor Hamill, Councillor Owen-Jones, Councillor Gates, Councillor Corwell, Councillor Peter Young, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Bowden-Lumsden, Councillor Castro, Councillor Tozer, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Vorster, Councillor Pauline Young, Councillor McDonald and Councillor O'Neill.
Against? Carry unanimous?
Here.
Here. Right.
Cash splash.
All right. Any other items? Councillor Peter Young.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to ask a question about item 8.2, which is a general business item. There's no papers associated with this. The motion is that there be a review of the whole of city community grants process. So I'm conscious of that it was dealt with in closed session, but I'd just like to ask if there's a particular focus to that. Is it about the amount of funds that are allocated? Is it about the process of assessment?
Councillor
or is it just
Jones.
about everything?
So, Mr Mayor, it's in particularly to ensure that we make the best decisions possible in regards to the decision-making around the community grants and the acquittal of previous community grants that may have been issued and hadn't quite been acquitted in time for the next round of community grants. So it's actually a body of work that's already in motion. This just affirms the fact that we're very interested in seeing changes. If you recall, when we did the community grants most recently, Mr Mayor, we made some not insignificant changes to in particularly make sure the city backed the surf lifesaving movement. So it's in that vein, Councillor Young.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other items, councillors? Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the remaining recommendations of the Governance Administration Finance Committee be adopted.
Seconder, Councillor Patterson. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against? Carry unanimous. Thank you, Director. We go to Economic, Tourism and Events. Councillor Castro.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I move the report of the Economy, Tourism and Events Committee meeting, which was held on Wednesday the 2nd of November 2022, covered by recommendations 1 to 4 be received.
Seconder, Councillor Tozer. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against? Motion carried. Any item you wish to deal separately, Councillor Lacastro?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yes, item 7.2 from memory. Yes, it is. Just for a declaration.
Declaration 7.2.
So it's the declaration. Do I need to read it out or do you just see this
No, on the screen. Let's have a look. Keep going up there. KDV. Okay, procedural motion there. Councillor Gates.
Mr Mayor, I moved this at committee and I'm happy to move it again today that Councillor Lacastre may participate in the decision despite the councillor's conflict of interest. The declaration was made, Mr Mayor, in an abundance of caution at committee because it came to our attention that the location of perhaps committee meetings for RDK may have been on the site of the same company for which Councillor Lacastre's wife is General Manager.
Yeah, fair enough.
So it was simply in an abundance of caution and we all agreed that Councillor Lacastre should remain in the room and participate in it.
Who seconded it? Councillor Tozer, good. All right. Anyone speak against? Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands.
Mayor Tate, Councillor Hamill, Councillor Owen-Jones, Councillor Gates, Councillor Caldwell, Councillor Peter Young, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Bowden-Lumsden, Councillor Tozer, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Vorster, Councillor Pauline Young, Councillor McDonald and Councillor O'Neill.
All right. Against? Motion carry. Councillor Castro did not vote. Councillor Gates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I will move the item if that's okay.
Yeah, move it.
And wait for a seconder. And
Seconder, Councillor Pauline Young.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to speak to this. Councillor Young just asked a question about who the company involved are, and it's a company that's proposing a massive opportunity for us to partner in Northern Gold Coast to attract one of the world's largest international sporting organisations to our city. I understand, Mr Mayor, that you were part of a tour on your most recent visit to the UK and that has assisted the officers in preparing the report that has been endorsed by committee. The project, it's a confidential project, but it would be jointly funded and subject to the conditions of our investment attraction program. And that means, Mr Mayor, that detailed milestones will be established in terms of capital investment and jobs, and those milestones would have to be met along the way before any funds from the council would be forthcoming. So it's a win-win situation whereby there's a massive contribution of funding from other parties, Mr Mayor, that would provide something that the council simply wouldn't have the capacity to deliver in Northern Gold Coast. So it's a great opportunity for the city and I hope it gets support today.
Yeah. Against? Councillor Owen-Jones.
So, Mr Mayor, I don't want to speak against it, but I do want to speak to some of the concerns that I had at committee, and I appreciate that it's confidential, so if that's okay with you.
Yep.
So, Mr Mayor, the committee was kind enough to amend the officer's recommendation to include the words "and appropriate community access agreement being secured." And to be honest, Mr Mayor, that's what swayed me in being in favour of it. As a representative in the north of the Gold Coast, there's been one particular sporting organisation that has been in contact with a lot of the Northern Gold Coast representatives about a field of play, and the city has some funding set aside in several cohorts' time in the LGIP2 program to stimulate that. This has the potential of bringing that forward. It comes with its own set of challenges, but after the committee meeting, I spoke to one of the business development officers in one of the host organisations, and he is very interested in pursuing the community access which we sought. So I think that this has, when it becomes non-confidential, the ability to be a really exciting opportunity for sport in the north of the Gold Coast. And I thank the officers for a lot of the hard work that they've done in bringing it to this point today, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Anyone speak against the motion? Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against? Carry unanimous. Any other items deal separately? Councillor Castro?
Mr Mayor, I move for the adoption of the remaining items.
Second to Councillor Tozer. Put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Against? Motion carried. Thank you, Director. Good to see you again. Right, councillors, consideration notice of motion, nil. Questions on notice, nil. Presentation of petition, nil. General business, nil. Other business, nil. As there's nothing else, meeting closed. Should I take a 8-minute break?
I did have 12:05.
All right. Yeah. I want to close the meeting, but if you can just hang back, I just want to talk to you about something else that's not on the agenda. So the meeting closed. Streaming off.